My music really is I think a amalgamation, if you will, of three interests, three things. It's kind of centered around these things. The first, and I'll tell you that there's a composer as well that, or someone's music that changed that world for me a little bit. The first would be a timbre driven approach. For me, this came from Helmut Lachenmann's music. The first time I heard his music, I'm like, what do you mean this is a cello or a
Yeah.
piano or whatever it is? It's like, what? But so interesting. To me, there's no such thing as a bad sound. A sound is just a thing. And every sound has value. And every sound has a different characteristic. So how we use those sounds, that's where the magic is. Could be like a screech, like a chalkboard, nails on the chalkboard kind of sound. And like when we hear that by itself, it's like, oh man. But used in the right context or in the right manner, how it's contextualized with other sounds, it could be the perfect sound for what you need,
Yeah.
you know? So sounds aren't good or bad. There's just an infinite possibility of sounds. And we can construct them in any manner that we want. And I would also lump into that silence. To me, silence is the negative space of music. And so even how we contextualize silence and how we enter and exit silence makes a difference. Whether it's abruptly or whether it's gradually. Um, so it's not nothing. It has value as well. So this timbre driven approach. And so when I play, drum set or whatever, I'm augmenting the kit with all kinds of different sounds. And sometimes it's just random stuff I find that I think sounded neat. So then the next thing is a rhythmic language that's based on density as opposed to a metronomic grid. So I'm not seeking to align anything vertically to the master that is the metronome. Instead, it's about the horizontal correlation between the notes, the density of those notes. And for me, that came from playing Stewart's music. When you play his music, it's very specific, and there's these crazy rhythms and stuff. And you spend a lot of time, at least for me, my approach was play it a lot with a metronome and make sure all those rhythms are accurate and stuff. Then once you really know it, you kind of get rid of the metronome and it ebbs and flows a little more. And to me, it felt really organic. It was like some of the first music I played that didn't feel like so goes like this, it goes like this. So once you kind of pass that point of just like counting your ass off, for lack of a better term, it's like, whoa, all of a sudden it's like super organic and natural and flows, in a different manner than, you know. And then the last thing is an interest in sonic space. I call it space in quotes. And this came from me from Morton Feldman's music. First time I heard Morton Feldman's music, I'm like, I am so bored.
Yeah.
Like, is this it? This is what's the piece doing? It was in his Rothko Chapel. She's like, one thing seems to happen, and another thing. It's just like, there's like almost 30 minutes of this or whatever. I think it's 29 minutes long or something ish. Whatever. Anyways, it's like, really? And then I realized, like, oh, that's it. That's the point. And like you listen to like his piano pieces, where it's just kind of one note plunking after the next. And same deal. It's kind of just like, what do you mean there's 10 minutes of this, man? It's so boring. Then you realize there's like space in between the notes and stuff that it's like, whoa, that's what it is. You kind of feel like you're in this meditative zone. Once I made that kind of epiphany, it was like, wow, this is awesome. I'd kind of dabbled in minimalism and stuff, post minimalism, like towards the end of my undergrad. And that was kind of, I think it was a similar feeling with that, where you're kind of looking for that like kind of trance, or like this crazy experience that's encapsulated by the piece. And so now to me, all three of those things kind of work together. The characteristics of a sound are affected by its relationship to the next note. It's all contextualized by one another. So if you have a sound that's really long or like you can't play it very loud, it can only be used in a certain manner. which might affect how you play it rhythmically. Or just rolling on a cymbal for a significant amount of time, like several minutes,
Right.
and working to draw out different overtones on the cymbal. It's like you could have that experience like, man, this is boring. He's just rolling on a cymbal for 10 minutes. But once you kind of get inside that zone and listen for that nuance and stuff, all of a sudden the different timbres that you're pulling out of the cymbal, the different overtones, harmonics and stuff makes a big difference. And when you hone in on that, you can get in that trance-like zone.
You mostly play drum set these days. Can you apply these concepts to other instruments, like when you play vibraphone, or do you apply these to the electronics? I'd imagine so, right?
Yeah, I think a lot of like working with electronics is about, again, creating possibilities that we may not be able to achieve otherwise, So, for instance, this could be like some kind of drone that's built electronically. And when I say drone for me, it wouldn't just be a static drone. It would probably be a whole bunch of drones that kind of morph together that have different amplitude envelopes and stuff. So they kind of come out of the woodwork a little bit at a time, so you get this kind of shifting drone that's largely the same, but slightly different. That goes really well with playing stuff on cymbals because of the character of the cymbal. It wouldn't work as well with a bright cymbal, but with a dark or complex cymbal that has a lot of overtones and stuff, it blends really well with that drone.
So you're making, when you build out your kit, when you're selecting the instruments that you play, the drums and all the other kind of auxiliary things that you use, you're thinking about these things before you even pick up an instrument.
Yes. And I carry with me, I call it the suitcase of goodies. It's just an old Samsonite suitcase that I bought at a thrift store or something because I thought it was cool. That's just full of all kinds of stuff, from like tambourines, like proper instruments, tambourines, small cymbals, to a fake plant that I bought at Michael's, a tin can, like a giant tin can, like coffee can size. It's got chains and nuts and bolts and all kinds of different stuff in it, to singing bowls, crotales. And so that's my possibilities there. All those sounds have value. It's all about how they're applied and utilized to construct an improvisation or a composition.
Yeah.
So there's times where like I'll play a gig and I might touch that suitcase like once. And there's times where I might almost exclusively use the suitcase. Like I never play the drums acoustically in a traditional manner. That's a possibility there. And I guess that's it. It's like sometimes I use a lot of it, sometimes I don't. It's just what the piece, and I say piece, but what the performance, what the improvisation needs, what's going to contribute to that, or what's going to give the effect that I want, or the sound that I want.
Thank you so much for tuning in to Micromaker by Loose Leaf Transmissions. We hope you enjoyed this brief glimpse into the inner workings of the creative life. If this resonated with you, be sure to check out the full conversation on Music Maker with Tyler Kline, a podcast exploring craft and process, philosophy and inspiration, and the honest, often messy parts of being an artist, creative uncertainty, purpose and identity, and resilience. You can find Music Maker wherever you get your podcasts or by visiting musicmakerpodcast.com.